So welcome to Modeling and Animation Systems 1. Before we get started with literally anything, can I just get a quick show of hands? How many of you have actually used 3D modeling software before? That's a lot more than I was expecting. So just a little over half the class. Can I ask where, why, any particular reason? Yep.
Oh, last year, professor taught us to use Blender to draw 2D animations.
Oh, okay. Gavin taught you for 2D animation. He does like doing that. Lucas?
I personally use it since high school, but I mainly use it right now for 3D modeling for creative stuff.
Okay, very cool. That's something we'll get into a little bit later, and we'll talk about all the different things we can do. And one more.
My high school actually just had courses that included 3D.
Oh, that's sick. I've never heard of high school having that before, so that's pretty good. So we start a little bit with the introductory stuff, and we'll go through from the basics today. If you're unfamiliar with Blender at 0, you'll still kind of get an idea of how to go. But the elephant in the room, I'm obviously not Gavin. Where's Gavin? So this is the first year, I think, as far as Gavin's been in the program, that somebody that's not Gavin has been teaching this course. My name is Marcus. I've been working with Gavin in these courses for the last 5 years or so. I started TAing this course back in 2020 when I was in third year of this program. I graduated from it, same one that you're all in right now. So my work mainly focuses around doing contract stuff for environment art, hard surface modeling, that kind of thing, this kind of stuff. This is mostly the kind of stuff that we're going to get you guys started with here. The course is changing a little bit. In the past, we do a little bit of a mix of characters, environments, and that kind of thing. But now that there's more dedicated courses for character work and stuff like that, we can focus on making cool hard surface stuff and really building up the fundamentals. So if you have any old syllabuses that you pulled up before this class, sorry, new one's a little bit different, but you've all had a chance the last couple weeks to sort of look at it-ish. It's been up there, it's visible, I hope, I assume. So like I said, I was a graduate from this program as well. These are my projects from fourth year. This is the kind of thing that we're expecting you guys to do in the next couple of years. You guys are mostly second year, I imagine. Okay, so you've got 2 more years of this. If you're taking Modeling 2 next year, you may end up with me again. I'm doing Modeling 2 this year as well as Modeling 1. And your TA this semester is Josiah Cabral. Not sure if any of you are familiar with him. I think Lucas's fist bump says yes. He's very good. I'll talk a bit more about him later, and he'll introduce himself during the first lab, but he is a member of GAC, so if you've done any stuff with the GAC Art Club, then you would know him as well. Okay. So after the program, I graduated and started a small indie studio, and that's sort of what I do. The teaching bit is something I do on the side, and it's a little bit unusual. When I'm not working on games, I'm teaching elementary and teaching university. So if I'm coming at you and you feel like you're in like a grade 3 classroom, I'm sorry, that's just kind of how it is. But I will be asking you questions, that kind of thing. I think it really just helps when everybody's sort of involved in the learning. All right. So this is the kind of thing that you can expect to do out of this program as well. We'll talk about it, we'll make cool stuff for games, and a lot of the focus is going to be as if this is you. If you're going out and you're making a big game by yourself, what can we do? How can we sort of manage everything as a solo artist, or maybe you and one other artist? We'll learn about all that, and then Modeling 2, if you take it next year, is more when you learn about, oh, this is what I want to do for a career, I want to go into AAA, I want to learn about environment art, I want to do specifically vehicles or whatever. That's the kind of thing you'll do next year in Modeling 2, if this course is interesting and fun for you, which I hope it is. So the lectures are at this time every week on Mondays, no surprise there. 5:10 to 8 p.m. in Psi now, I guess, no longer UA 2120. I don't have office hours or a dedicated office. You will probably just find me in the game lab though. I do spend a lot of time there when I have free time to spend. Or you can shoot me a message on Discord. If you message me on Discord, I will respond like immediately. Even if it's like 2 a.m., if I'm awake, I'll respond. If you shoot me a Canvas message, it updates me like once a day and I'll probably miss it. So if you need help, send a Discord message so I can give you the help you need when you need it, not a day later. All right? I don't want you to be stuck and feel helpless and then quit and give up on these things. I want you to be able to keep working through all of your problems. You can also email me if it's something more school related. Maybe you need like an extension on a deadline or something along those lines. You can shoot me an email. It's just my name at ontariotecU.ca, same as all the other professors I'm sure you're quite familiar with at this point. And the last little note there, you'd see it for the semester, Josiah Cabral, very good, former student of mine. He is quite well versed in environment art and hard surface art as well. Maybe not your guy for characters, so to say, but very good for any kind of environment stuff that you want to do. Any questions for that kind of thing at this time? This is all the introductory stuff, but no. Dead silent. Feel free to yell at me. If you have a question, just blurt it out. I know it's terrifying to do that kind of thing, but like, just go for it. I really don't mind. If you couldn't tell by now, I'm not the most formal kind of person. I'd rather you just learn, yell out, get the help you need. So my goal for you guys, the kind of stuff I put in the job application, what do I want from you? Well, I want you to get comfortable making mistakes. That's going to be a big part of modeling one is you got to mess up. Like big time and over and over. The more you mess up, the better. Because then we get you the help you need and you'll actually remember it. And when you mess up, your classmates might have the same problem. Help each other out. If you're not already in the Discord for the school server, the GDSA Discord, Game Dev server, you can add a role there. It says Modeling 1, and that'll put you in the Modeling 1 chat. And it's just for people in Modeling 1, like the professors and stuff. So if you have any questions, any help that you think might benefit somebody else too, just throw it in there. And then everybody from the community will help out. A lot of the old grads and people like myself are more than willing to help. Same thing, ask questions. It'll help everybody in the long run. When you teach somebody something, you remember it way better than if you just ask and are told what to do, right? And then my last thing is just try to enjoy the class. It is fun. A lot of you, this is the first time you're doing 3D modeling. Maybe you hate it. Maybe like 1 week in, you just despise every part of it. And that's fine. That's all right. Try to find something in it to make it somewhat fun, or this whole semester is just going to be a drag, and obviously I don't want that for you. I think it's a very fun class, and it's a very useful skill, no matter what you do. Obviously I'm heavily biased, but like even if you're, like Lucas said earlier, just trying to make figures so you can 3D print it. Very useful skill, just for hobbies. Maybe you do D&D campaigns on the weekend, something like that. Maybe you want to 3D print a cosplay. I don't know, up to you. But you kind of need these skills to make it happen. Last note is on these slides. So I'll download the slides, obviously, and post them to you guys. And then it's just a quick note. Hotkeys are hard. And there are thousands of them. Blender is just hotkeys, 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 hotkeys. So I've just labeled anything in the slides that's orange, hotkey, with instruction of what it does underneath. And what I'm probably going to do as the semester goes on is I'll start removing what the instruction does underneath and just leave the key, and you'll have to understand when and where to use it, and vice versa, until you actually have it like locked up in here, and you don't need to look for the orange notes anymore. Any questions on that stuff? No questions at all. It's a lot of yapping, and I talk really fast, so I'm sure at some point later you'll go, oh wait, I totally forgot about that thing. Shoot me a message. It happens. It's also in the recording. So let's take a look at the syllabus. I'm going to go through the assignments really quick, and then we'll look at the actual syllabus and how every week is going to be broken down. So the first assignment is going to be recreating a game model. This assignment's actually going to go live literally at 8 p.m. today, though I wouldn't recommend you start today unless you know kind of what you're doing. If you've never 3D modeled before, you're going to need the knowledge from the next couple of weeks to do the assignment properly. If you have in the past, it's open tonight, so you can get it done early, get it done ahead of time, do whatever you want. It's due September 22nd. As we're 10%, not like a huge chunk, just a bit. And the goal with that is to have you be familiar with Blender. It's not a particularly hard assignment. It just takes a little bit of time and gaining familiarity with Blender. So quick note, yeah, not this model. I just have example models that I put there that are sort of similar steps to what the assignments look like. That was my model from Ubisoft Next a few years ago. So it's going to help you understand topology and UVs and other things that you don't know what they mean yet, but we'll get to it. I just want to give you that heads up of what these assignments are going to look like. Second one's going to be texturing. We have a fantastic 3D model that we made. Well, how do we make it even prettier? We texture it. And we're going to learn all about UVs, PBR materials, things like that. How many of you have taken game, or was it computer graphics? Anyone here taking computer graphics? Also a lot. Okay, awesome. That stuff is going to be super useful when we come to doing the PBR texturing, because if you understand what's going on behind the scenes, you'll understand how to make it look good up front. You're understanding the back end and the front end. So there'll be opportunity for storytelling and things in texturing. We'll talk about that closer too. I'm just giving you a rundown. The rubrics on Canvas for that as well. They'll be up closer to when the assignment should actually be happening. So third assignment is modular kit. I'm going to teach you how to build kits for environments so that you can build large places as a small team of artists. If you try to model every individual piece in your environment, you will be there for days, weeks, years, decades, I don't know. But if you make use of reusable textures, models, kits, all that kind of thing, you'll be able to make incredible spaces just as one teeny tiny little person. All right? I also am really not trying to get in the way of your GDW, like as much as I possibly can, because I like GDW. I assume you like GDW. So a lot of these things, if you're doing them for whichever assignment, like feel free to use them in your GDW, or vice versa. If you have something in GDW that you'd like to present to me instead, just shoot me a message and I'll see if I can work it out somehow. I want your GDW games to be as good as possible, as I'm sure you do as well. So building up these kits that you can use in Engine, and we are going to have a class going over how to put your stuff in Engine, how to use the grids, how to use the tools. We'll do that later. And then boom, assignment 4, your final diorama, building that scene, whether it's something totally separate for a project, whether it's something for GDW, however you want to do it. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll put in some kind of presentation suggestion, like what you want to do. We'll give you a quick approval or not approval, and then we can move on from there. But my goal, again, is you can possibly get between the last one and this one, like 35% of your grade just for GW, right? So I think that's a pretty good deal. Something we used to do in this program, but they stopped doing it for whatever reason, but we're gonna bring it back. The other goal is that it's something that you can put on your portfolio. Again, to ask the question, like, how many of you think you want to do art for, like, career-wise? Okay, a few, and that's fine, I didn't expect everybody to put their hands up, but maybe throughout the course of this semester, you'll go, wow, that was actually kind of fun, maybe I do want to do this. And in case you do, you'll have an actual finished portfolio piece that you can use and present to other people. So I'm going to be forcing you, like literally from this week, to present your work professionally. Because we always kind of lack on that end. Not this year. Every assignment will have like examples of what not to submit and what to submit. All right, so we'll keep everything looking as good as possible. Big one, weekly activities. If you've taken a Gavin course before, you are familiar with these. I'm going to be honest, I don't like them. I'm not a huge fan. I'm sure you aren't either, because it's a lot. You have to do one a week. That's a ton. I've tried to dial them back as much as possible. Why didn't I just get rid of them? Well, you guys are just starting out with this stuff, and if you don't do it regularly, you're going to forget it. I've been doing this for almost 7 years. If I take a break, I also forget. What was that hotkey? I don't remember. Now I got to search it up. What was that shader node? I don't remember. If we keep you doing it week to week, they're going to be small. There's going to be 10 of them worth 3% starting this week, and they'll be due after the lab. So like at most, they should take like an hour, and you'll have the lab time to ask for extra help if you need it as well. Okay? And then finally, there's 15% that comes from the lab components. So that'll be up to Josiah. He's got 15% to play with. I assume, and from what he's kind of told me, he's planning on doing 3 small assignments, maybe 5% each, that would take up the lab time. So it's not extra time that you need during that week, it's the lab time being dedicated to doing something that takes roughly 3 hours. All right, that was a lot. Again, the recording's here, so if you forget anything, but while we're here, are there any questions regarding assignments and things like that? Not a one. All right. So something grading, they're going to be due Thursday after the lab, so you have extra time. Ask for help, like I said earlier. I just keep reiterating this point. Ask for help. I don't know why everybody's so afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Late submissions, same university policy, standard 5% a day, or shoot Desire out your message, and we'll kind of go over like what your situation is, and then depending on like we can make some adjustments there. Cool. As far as actually submitting these assignments, and the first bit of the professionalism bit, how many of you get that error where you put something on Canvas and it's like, oh, hold on, you don't have enough storage space. You can't be doing this. Right, this plagues students at Ontario Tech and has for years. Luckily, there's a solution. It's quite simple. We go to Canvas, and under your profile, you'll find Files. And in Files, you just sort by size and delete the big ones. You don't have very much space. I think it's like less than a gig. But if you get 160 megabytes apparently. So 160 megabytes is not a lot of space, enough for like a couple textures if they're really big ones. So delete your old files, download them first if it's work you want to keep, but I don't think James is going to miss being able to look back at your design document from week 1, September 2023. You should be okay to get rid of those at this point, or download them if you want to keep them. And then occasionally, like I was saying with the professionalism bit, I'm going to be presenting you with videos or images or some way for you to figure out how you want to post this stuff on the discussion boards for submission. Please follow them. They're like 10 minutes. They're not going to be that long. They're not going to be that complicated. And as long as you follow the steps, I got no problem. You get perfect marks on the submission part of things. Super easy. You are not dealing with this. That's a picture from Modeling 2 next year. But as an example, a lot of students will send me something like this. And then I'm left wondering what all of those little nodes are with no explanation and no way to read it. Or they could just click the button at the top that the video shows that exports it readably. So it'll be that kind of thing. They're small, but it helps keep everything professional. Same thing, wrong TA. Last chance. No questions? Not a one? Yes.
Are there going to be like animation system stuff?
There will be some animation system stuff towards the end. I'll go over the entire syllabus right now, actually.
Are they just like basic level of animation?
Yep, well, we have to learn a few different things. First, we'll be modeling characters at the end, then we'll learn how to rig them, and then we'll learn how to animate them. So you have to actually make the bones of the character to be able to animate them first. That's where the animation systems parts come in. Okay, let's look at the syllabus. So this week, for the most part, it's just the course overview, but I want to get you guys familiar with Blender, at least have it downloaded. Do you have it downloaded? Lots of thumbs up. Okay, perfect. I just put out an announcement. I'm using 4.43. Those numbers really don't mean that much. It doesn't change anything other than if I give you a file example in 4.43 and you use something like 2.97, it's not going to open. Okay? I would recommend using at least 4. Jason?
Blender on Steam cause any issues?
Blender on Steam is a massive pain in the rear.
Why?
So here's the reason why. It loves auto-updating and moving your files around. And right now you guys don't really use any of these things called add-ons, but eventually we're going to be extending Blender's functionality using add-ons that are either external or from the internet. Yes?
Oh, so does that mean I should uninstall Blender from Steam and then download it from like the website?
I'd recommend doing it that way. It doesn't really matter as long as you just make sure that auto updates are turned off, that your file locations don't move, and that your add-ons aren't on the cloud so they don't accidentally get wipes. But that's a lot, so I'd recommend just downloading it separate, keep your add-ons in a separate place where you know where they're at, and then that makes everything easier. Okay. So today we're going to go over the fundamentals of Lucas.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask you how important thing, like personally, I love an add-on called Loop Tools.
Yep.
I feel it's like a must-have if you're like learning Blender because it helps a lot of stuff.
It is absolutely a must-have, and we're going to install it pretty early on. It's so much of a must-have that that one is fine with the Blender version. I'll get into a little bit more, but there are some add-ons that were so good that Blender's just like, we'll move them to the internet, and then you can just attach to them from the internet. So in sense like 4.4 or something, you've been able to do that. Loop Tools is one of them, but I'm going to be giving you add-ons. Don't tell the people that I paid them for. I'll be giving them to you so you can use them, and hopefully that will help speed up your workflows and make everything better. Okay, yeah, basic tools, and then we'll go over preparation for the semester-long project. So that final diorama, that final big project, we'll just talk a little bit more about what the expectations are for that, because you can get started like tomorrow if you really wanted to. Next week we'll get into more complex shapes. So this week we're just kind of using big blocky shapes just to get familiar with the interface, and then next week we'll learn a little bit more about like how to manipulate individual vertices to get what we want, how to change the silhouette of objects using different tools that are a little bit more advanced. And Fundamentals 3, we'll just continue that process. We'll learn about modifiers and different types of procedural workflows, and then differences between real-time meshes and game meshes. There's a lot of differences between the two that we're not going to get into them yet, but we'll get into them in a few weeks. Then we're going to do 2 weeks of texturing. So this is where we start to get into that PBR stuff. You'll learn about Substance Painter, which is another program. Which is another program that you'll have to have installed in a few weeks. I would recommend just doing it now, though, since you got the time. You can get it through the Adobe software portal. So it's through the Ontario Tech software portal. One of them will be called Substance Painter, and there's another one called Substance Designer. When we get back from the break, we're going to start working in Engine. Hopefully that goes well. We've never done it in this course before. Usually we just stick to Blender, but of course you guys are making video games. So what better place to go than into an actual engine? So we'll start getting everything built in the engine, how we can use our tools and everything. And then after that, we'll get into character modeling, making small characters for your games. We'll talk about rigging those characters for animation. And then last week there, Intro to Animation is going to be all about how to make animations, keyframes, export, everything. Any questions about all that? Yes?
This is more related to Substance Painter, but I'm trying to find it on the software portal.
It should be, I think, on the software portal, and then there's Adobe Creative Cloud, and then under that, it should have everything. Lucas?
No, in the software portal, you have to download Adobe Cloud, and then on the software, you log in with your student email, and then you have access to all the suite.
Yeah.
I had to do that last year to download Illustrator and Photoshop.
Yeah.
And so it's just easier if you go to the website from Adobe and log in with your student account, and then it just works.
Okay, so skip the software portal bit, just go to Adobe and get it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a pain. Adobe bought Painter like 4 years ago, and it's been rough trying to get the students onto it ever since. It used to be so much easier. Now I have to pay like $80 a month for it. But okay. There are no required readings for this class, just required modeling. I'd recommend you have like an Intuos tablet. It'll help with like the texturing and stuff later, but it's honestly not even necessary. I basically exclusively use a mouse for all of this, texturing, sculpting, yada, yada, yada. Not necessary to have a tab, it does help though. Yep.
Is that like a drawing tablet or is that like something else?
Yeah, it's a drawing tablet.
Okay.
Yeah, so any kind of drawing tablet works. It doesn't have to be a Wacom or anything like that, but something that you can draw on would help. Okay. Labs and assignments, we've gone through already. If you miss coursework, obviously shoot me an email. If it's less than 20%, we can figure something out, maybe an alternative assignment or something like that if you were away for sickness or whatever else happens. If it's more than 20%, there's a bunch of stuff you have to go through with the university, but hopefully that doesn't happen to anybody here, but here it is in the syllabus just in case. Okay, and I think that's everything to cover in the syllabus, because there are no exams, obviously. Cool. With that out of the way, we can start to actually introduce you to Blender. How do we do that? Well, first I'm going to talk a little bit about what a 3D model is. You kind of know, I'm sure you've looked at them before, you have a basic understanding, but I want you to understand it a little bit deeper than that. We're looking beyond the fact that it's just a box, and we're going to break things down into mostly vertices, edges, and faces. So these are the three things that make up any 3D model, and our main goal as we work through this semester is I want you to be comfortable with moving vertices, edges, and faces into different shapes. We can add these things, we can subtract these things, and we can move them. And that is it. That is everything that we can actually do. Every other action that comes, like rotating a face, you're actually just moving 4 points. Everything is being built off just moving these vertices around. And when you understand that, it kind of helps you understand a little bit more what's going on. So the goal by the end of the day is you should be able to make something like this. We'll talk about the different things that go into something like this. It's made of certain primitives. Any guesses what kind of primitive you might have learned in grade 3, Lucas?
A cylinder.
Wow, cylinder. Right. I want you to get familiar with breaking these things down. You should be able to look at any object in this room by the end of the day and tell me which primitive you would start with to build it. If I say like that light right there, what would you start with? The one in the middle running all the way down.
A cube. A cylinder.
Cube, cylinder. I'd probably start with the cylinder because if you look at it closely, you'll see the bottom half is rounded out.
You can just bevel it.
You can also bevel it, but that's one extra step, and I want you guys to be fast, as quick as you can be, because the more things you make, the better you're going to get quicker. If I asked you to make like this, now we're getting complicated.
A UV sphere.
UV sphere, yeah.
Sphere, but there's more than just a sphere. We can use multiple primitives.
A cylinder.
Sphere, cylinder.
4 cylinders.
Right. And I'll just go one more, just for the sake of completion. Let's just use like that box. Wow, I said it just now.
A cube.
A cube.
Break it up.
So we've looked at everything in this room, and we've come down to 3 things: a sphere, a cube, and a cylinder. That's it. That's it. You're going to be building up everything for the rest of the year using cubes, cylinders, and spheres. That's all you really need to know, and we'll talk more about that later, and I'll give you a chance. What are we actually going to do with these 3D models? Well, there's a bunch of things. Not many of you put your hands up when you said they're one of the artists, and that's fine, but there are other realms to use these kind of things. Games is obviously the one we're focusing on the most, but you, for some reason, in 2 years might just go, wow, I really like product development, and I want to render my products out nice. Well, this is a skill for that as well. Maybe you give up on game dev and become an architect instead. Again, you're going to need these 3D modeling skills and this Blender skills to be able to do that kind of thing. To work on movies. During this course, we'll learn about the differences between movie meshes and game meshes, toys and figures, like Luke mentioned earlier. I know people who are 3D modelers who literally work for Spin Master because they just model the toys. They have to exist somehow, and it all starts with a sculpt from an artist. And then finally, we can branch out of like the modeling specifically and get into animation, motion graphics, that kind of thing. You can go work for Nike and make cool shoe commercials. There's a lot of different fields to go, so even if right now you don't feel like art is your path, maybe something like that will come up later. Even within each of these fields, we have a bunch of different specializations. So maybe you're thinking, environment sucks. Well, become a character artist. Maybe you don't like characters, you can do weapons, that kind of thing. Maybe you don't like weapons, you can do vehicles. It's so specific in AAA. If you like making one thing, and just one thing, you can make that one thing. These are all students from this program, basically. I know all of them, which is why I put their work in here. And they're all roughly in the community still. If you might have seen, I think Jack was helping somebody in the GAP Discord like literally 2 days ago. So you can still get help from these kind of people as well who are professionals and do these one specific thing in industry. Okay, so how do we actually get there? Well, we're going to break this down into 3 main steps that we're going to go over the next 5 weeks, basically. Modeling, UVing, and texturing. This is heavily simplified. There are way more steps that go into this kind of thing and a lot of problems along the way. But this is like the main bit of it. If you can understand and wrap your head around these 3 things, we're good. I've done my job. Your games will look good. Everybody wins. Of course, we need a program to do that kind of thing. And we'll be using Blender. So I now have to actually sit down and open things. I'm going to go through on the slides first. Lucas?
Yeah, sorry, I just have a curious question because I was talking to some older students from here, and they told me that I think some years ago they didn't use Blender, they used Maya.
Yes, Maya was used, I think 6 years ago was the last time we used Maya in this program actually, so it's been quite a while. Maya used to be the only realistically useful 3D modeling package back when Blender was in like the 2 versions. It's much better now than it was, and industry has sort of supported it. A lot of these studios they use Maya because they built foundations on them. So like Ubisoft still uses Maya because they built so many tools and invested so many dollars that they're not going to switch. They've already got all this stuff built right into their engines and everything. The skills are transferable. So we are learning Blender, and I'm going to teach you the hotkeys for this and that and that. The skills are transferable. If you can understand these three things, doesn't matter what program you use, whether it's Max, Maya, Blender, SolidWorks. If you can get your head around these three things, you'll be good no matter what program it is. And as Gavin used to tell me, when you're applying to the industry, and if you don't have Maya experience, put Maya on your resume, and if you get the job, learn Maya before the interview, because you already have a foundation built. Okay, so if anybody or everybody could just open Blender, and you'll be greeted with this.
Actually created with this.
You can ignore that. Unless you've got existing like presets from an older version that you want to import, you can ignore that first startup window. It doesn't really matter. And we'll get into what we're actually looking at. I'm going to call things by their names just so it's consistent, and later you can search things up if you're confused. So this is very simply the 3D viewport. What do we do in the 3D viewport? We view 3D models. Pretty simple, all in all. Right now, I just want you to get familiar with moving around this space. There are a few ways to go about it. And I'll have my hotkeys. They should pop up on the screen, and then that also helps if it works. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There we go. So in the bottom left for you guys, anything I press in the recording or live will pop up right here. So you can get an idea. I'm doing my best to not use my hotkeys that I built for myself. Trying to use the default settings as much as possible. I might forget sometimes to click buttons that don't exist. For example, here we have middle mouse button and shift is how you pan around. So there's going to be three main actions that we need to learn right now: orbiting, panning, zooming, right? Each basically describes himself. If we use middle mouse button, so I'm just hitting middle mouse button, we're going to orbit around whatever object is currently in focus. Okay? It'll be a little bit confusing, and as soon as we start moving, you might get a little bit lost. So I'm going to teach you the first most important thing, how to go home. Chances are you're just going like this, and now I'm lost, and I spin around and I can't figure out where I'm at. Very common. We can just click the cube, click tilde, and then 3. And that will focus our view right back to whatever we're looking at. So if you're in a game engine, usually just press F. Here, for some reason, they decided to make it complicated, tilde 3. I'd recommend binding it to, if you have an extra button on your mouse, I put it on the top little button here, because you're going to be pressing it a lot. And that's going to take you right back to whatever you're working on, so you don't get lost in your viewport. So just take a bit of time to try moving around it. We can hit shift and middle mouse to move around. Same deal, I'd recommend binding that to like a side button if you have one. Just makes navigating a lot easier. Up, let me do that. So we can pan around the object, we can take a look at it. How many of you have numpads? Most. Okay, I'm going to split you up into 2 groups, quote unquote. The numpad people, your life is super easy. You've got so many extra buttons. On the numpad, you'll see when I press, I've got numpad 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Your numpad is going to change your viewing angle of whatever you're focused on. It's going to be super useful later. If we click 1, we have the front view. 1 to go to the front view. 3 takes us to the side view. Okay, so if I have this box here, and I can just really quickly kind of draw on it. And surface. Okay. When I hit 1, you'll see we're at the front of our cube. 3 to the side, 7 to the top, and 5 switches us between orthographic and perspective. So everybody know the difference between orthographic and perspective? Ish. The CG people definitely should. If I was to take a look at this box from just straight up top like this, you can imagine that in the background, that back face is getting away from me in perspective, so the lines are leading into the middle. If I was to switch this to orthographic, you imagine everything is just a straight line now. So this side is straight down all the way down. My perspective is going from something like this, where the cube is taking up either less or more of my viewing range, to something like this, where the cube, no matter how far away it is the exact same part of my viewing range. An easier to understand example is if I take this cube and just move it way back here. There we go, way back there. So in perspective, that cube in the background, way back there, gone. You can barely see it, it's a dot. If I switch now to that front view I was talking about, so numpad 1, it looks as if it is literally right here. Right? We're taking away all that perspective distortion. Why is this useful? Let's take a look at your first assignment. Even the people in modeling 2 struggle with this too, so don't worry about it too much, but they will come up. Wow, spoilers. No, it's starting today anyway. So for assignment 1, I'm having you replicate this model that I made. It's quite simple, extremely simple. It shouldn't be too difficult, but if you can nail it and present it in a good way, then I'll know that you have mastery over the different viewing angles in the viewport and how to move around and navigate the space without too much worry. As well as add topology where necessary, all things that we're still learning. We'll go over them over the next couple of weeks. But I have provided you 3 images, and a 4th to show which parts are separate meshes. Anybody want to guess what these images are? Yep.
The orthographic views?
The orthographic views. So when we're modeling something, we're not necessarily modeling right from scratch. You guys are just getting started with this. I don't expect you to be able to visualize these objects in 3D. Just look at a 2D plane and understand it. So while we're just getting started, we're going to learn from each different plane. We're going to work one plane at a time, top, side, front. I can provide you with these, and you can plot them right in Blender and model to them in these different views to get an understanding of how the object looks from all 3 dimensions. That one we'll talk about later. But that's why it's good to understand the difference between these perspective and orthographic bits. So if we look here, even though this one here, it almost kind of looks like this part's longer just because it's closer to the camera than the actual handle itself. But if we look at it from an orthographic perspective, we can see that they're roughly-ish the same size, right? Same with this part as well. These edges are basically more or less going straight back. So they're not converging towards the back. You can't see it, obviously, because it's in perspective, or it's in orthographic. It's going straight back, okay? So this is the first assignment. You'll be able to do it that way if you so please, or you can just copy it throughout. You'll be expected to sort of understand the topology going on and how to replicate that stuff. You can just think about this while we go through it. I'm obviously not expecting you to start now. It's not due for 2 weeks. Okay. For the other group now, so that's for the numpad people. For the non-numpad people, here's how you can fake having a numpad. Up in the edit panel, we go to preferences. Okay. And then under system, actually you should all do this just as a getting started thing. Under system, undo steps. Pump it up. I think it starts at like 32, but there's going to be a time where you want to undo like 64 things and you just can't. And you didn't save a file version, and you're going to have to start over, and you're going to cry, and it's going to be miserable. Bumped up to 256, you'll almost never run out of undo steps, and then it's okay. Yes?
How would we open that panel?
It's under, so we go to Edit, and then Preferences. There are a bunch of different little settings here that you can change. For example, just running like off your graphics card instead of your CPU, changing your back end, if you understand what that stuff is, increasing your undo steps so you don't run out of undos. And then here under input for my non-keypad people, I don't have a numpad either, so I just have this thing, emulate numpad. What that's going to do is it's going to turn your top row. So that's how I'm doing the numpad inputs without numpad. It's faking it by using my number key row. You do lose access to the keys that were there originally, but they select your faces. They do this. They do, where is it? I have hotkeys for this. It's confusing me now. Everything that you want to do with the key row normally, you can just do right here. So it's not a big deal to lose that, and even getting navigation is something way more important. Okay, so I highly recommend Edit, Preferences, Input, Emulate numpad. Helps a lot. Okay. I'm going to go back to the slides and go back to like explaining the different parts, and in the meantime, still just continue getting used to clicking around like this. I'll give you a little thing to leave with. If you hit Shift A, you can start adding things. So you can feel free to play around with this. Move them around. Focus back in on them. Get used to it. Put it up there. Focus on it. Put it over there. Focus on it. That kind of thing. Just get used to moving around the viewport. In the meantime, I'll kind of be going over this stuff. All the navigation stuff is great, but additionally we have a bunch of information stuff. So if you hit N, remember orange is hotkeys. If you see orange, it's a hotkey. N will pull up your info panel. This is going to provide important information like where your object is it rotated, what's its scale, and what are its dimensions. All very important information. If anybody's used Blender before, can they tell me what happens if your like scale's out of whack? Yeah, but why do we want to do that?
Oh, because when we're to a game engine, it might like mess up with our import, and also when we actually UV wrap it, it might give us problems with the texture consistency.
Yep, those are two extremely right reasons. There's a million reasons. Those are two good ones. Basically, when we're modeling this stuff, if you have a problem, it's probably because something in this info panel is not right. Eventually, I'm going to teach you the 3-step. It's not a dance, it's a problem-solving solution, and it will fix 99% of your problems. I really want to drill it into your head, and I'll do it like every week. If you have a problem, we're going to do 3 things, and we're going to just repeat it, and that's it. We're going to do it every week. But it all comes down to something being wrong in here. And if you click N, you can open it up and take a peek and see what might be wrong. Maybe your scale's not set to 1, something like that. Maybe your rotation's off. On the flip side, on the other side of your screen, you'll find T. If you hit T, you'll open up the Tools panel. Very useful. You need these things to actually model stuff. Again, we're talking earlier about moving vertices around. These are the things that will move your vertices around. We're not going to learn about all of them just yet, but the main ones we're going to focus on are these 4. We'll learn the hotkeys for them, or if you want to use your mouse, then you can click on any of those things in the tool panel. We have from the top down, the movement, rotation, scale, and the multi-gizmo, which just lets you do everything, all of those things in one. But I'll show you what that looks like, or you can mess around with it right now as we go through. Right. So it's important when we talk about hotkeys in Blender to talk about context. There's no great way to explain what this means unless you're familiar with this sort of thing. But the Blender hotkeys are specific to where your mouse cursor is. It's kind of weird, but if your cursor is hovering over a window, right, and you click a hotkey, it's going to do whatever that window has the hotkey tied to. The easiest way to demonstrate this is if I just go in here. Over here, I can left click, right, and I'll get a bunch of different things, or what is this? Yeah, right click. I'll get a bunch of objects options, but if I right click over here, right, I get outliner options. Just instead of clicking, you're just clicking buttons. So if I click this object, and I'm going to click G here to move things around. We'll talk about G in a second, but now G is letting me move this thing around. Obviously, if I hover over this window and hit G, it's not going to move my object around, right? If I hit G over here, nothing's happening. I'm moving my cursor, nothing's happening. It's waiting for me to hover over this window specifically. Right? G is applying to this window. So you just got to, if you're ever pressing something and you're not sure why it's not working, chances are your cursor is just hovering over the wrong window. Context is a little bit hard to get used to, but as you get more familiar with the different windows and everything, it'll become easier to understand. Yeah, not so much a focus, just know that the different hotkeys will do different things in different windows. Okay. Two more panels that you probably want to get familiar with are the outliner. The outliner is where all of your objects live. It's where you can click on them without having to see them. So if you're lost in space, you can just click on the cube. It shows you your parenting structures. So if you have like one object parented to another, which is a concept you should all be familiar with, you can see it there. You can hide things in collections to make your file neat and organized. All stuff we'll go over later. And then the properties tab, which we're going to ignore for right now because that stuff is more of the complex stuff, but just know it's there. That's the one in the bottom right of your screen, right here. If you ever would like more windows, each one of these windows is just free. It's not necessarily one thing. That's why I'm talking about all these different tabs. I just need you to understand which ones you need in case you accidentally delete a window. Let's say I accidentally delete my outliner's gone. Sorry, my outliner's taken up the whole screen. My properties tab is gone. I'm screwed, right? I'm sure this happens to you in Photoshop all the time. You accidentally close the tab with your palette, and then you're like, what's going on? I don't have a palette, right? So I'm showing you this now so you know which ones you need. So unlike Photoshop, you don't just go up and make a new window. If you click in the bottom corner of any window, you can drag and make a new one. So I now have a second window here. By default, it's just the same thing that was out of the window you just made. But if I click here in the top left, we can change to any other kind of window. So I could turn this into another 3D viewport if I wanted to. It's small, not very useful, but I could. I could switch it to my animation sheet, timeline, whatever. I gave you those names so you kind of know what you're looking for. So properties, that's what we know we're missing. Boom, now it's back. We can keep working without any issues. Does everybody feel kind of comfortable moving around at this point? You've probably gotten bored of just moving around in an empty void for a little bit. So why don't we give you something more to do? We'll get started with the most simple of operations. Okay, these are the ones I just talked to you about that you're kind of going about. Scroll being zoom is the last one. You're not going to honestly use that super often. It's more about the other two. Okay. Now, I just kind of introduced you to context. We're going to keep going with the context examples. We have different modes when we're modeling, but the one that we're in most of the time is called object mode. Think of this as a hierarchical kind of thing. So at the top, we have object mode. How many of you took programming? Just out of like curiosity. Did you have to take programming? Was it mandatory? Yeah? Okay, so you all know about like object-oriented programming. Okay, this makes this easier. At the top is my object, right? This is the highest level. This is like my class. All of this information applies to this entire structure. So the location applies to this entire thing. The scale applies to the entire thing. We can use these functions, G, R, and S, to move around this object at its class structure level. So it's affecting everything within it, right? And we add these objects by clicking Shift A. So every object starts as a primitive. You can think of that as, again, like the main class that it's operating as. We just talked about the ones that are necessary, more or less. If you want to model everything in this room, you're using cubes, spheres, and cylinders, and that's all you really need. And we're going to manipulate those here and there. So you can add whatever objects you want. There are other things like curves, triangles, pentagons, whatever you really feel like adding. But I want you to get used to building things structurally just with these basic things. So actually what I'm going to ask you to do is using those functions we just learned about, so G, R, S, I'm going to have you build something. I just want to get you used to sort of filling in these spaces. So I made this tree. It's made exclusively of cubes that I have scaled, moved, and rotated in object mode. So it's a bunch of different cubes. You don't have to worry about topology. We're just moving cubes around, right? Think of them as like Lego pieces. We're building up a big set. I'm not going to ask you to make a tree. That's kind of complicated. What I will ask you to make is something like this. So I'll give you like 15 minutes or so. I don't know what time it is. I'll give you like 15 minutes or so to get started with making something. Anything. I'm sure a lot of you are at different skill levels, so I provided a few different things you could work towards. If you're brand new to this, I would recommend something like the hammer, probably. Very simple. You could probably imagine what two primitives make the hammer, right? And again, scaling, moving, rotating. If you're a little bit more familiar, try making the chair. That's a little bit more complicated. Again, just building it up as if they're made of Lego pieces. And then if you've already used Blender before, this one requires you using edit mode. So you can do that one where you have to inset and create these gaps in the stand thing. I don't really know what it is. I just picked these images up off IKEA. So pick something that you think will challenge you a little bit. It'll be like 15 minutes. I'll walk around. You can yell at me, ask for help. I guess I should pause the recording so it's not just dead air for like 15 minutes. Also appreciate it. Okay. So that was object level, class level, top of the hierarchy. Now within each of our classes, our square, our cube, whatever, we can use tab. I didn't put it in the filler text here, but we can hit tab in orange to enter edit mode. So if our base object being there in object mode is like our class, this is like our functions within that class. This is where we're making the minute changes that only affect these vertices. It's not a great example, but if you've taken programming, hopefully it kind of helps. Edit mode is where we're taking the individual things. So we're not changing the position of the entire object. We're just changing the position of each vertice. We're adding more vertices. We're rotating them, adding edges, faces, cutting, all that kind of stuff is happening inside of edit mode. So this is where we take our basic primitives and change them into new forms and start to build new silhouettes. This is where you're going to spend the majority of your time in edit mode. Get used to it. You have to get used to knowing when you are in edit mode and when you're not in edit mode, because you will encounter problems if you try to do edit mode things while not in edit mode, and vice versa. The easiest way to get into edit mode is to hit tab, but you can also just go up into the corner here with an object selected. So I'm going to press on this and now it's orange. Okay. I know this object is selected. I can go up here and click edit mode. You'll see a couple other modes: sculpt mode, vertex paint, weight paint, texture paint. We might learn about those later. For now, we just need to worry about edit mode. Okay. And by default, here we are thrown in. For my key row, non-numpad folks, up there in the top left is where you're going to select your different modes. So earlier I talked about vertices, edges, faces, the three things you need to understand how to move around. Here I've got vertices, edges, and faces. Those little things up there are called your selection mode. So in vertex mode here, I am selecting, wow, wouldn't you know it? Vertices. In edge mode, can anybody guess what I'm going to click? Yep. The edges. It was not a trick question. I'm now selecting edges. And in face mode, I can select the faces. The only one that's a little bit confusing is if you're in edit mode and in face mode, it kind of looks right now like I'm in object mode. It's hard to tell the difference, but as soon as you click, you'll realize because one face is selected, not the orange border around the entire object. Okay, so what can we do with our newfound powers here? What can we do in edit mode that's any different? Well, I've seen these before. G, R, S, the three buttons that you've just been pressing for the last 20 minutes. We can now press those buttons again. But like I said, this is now at a class level. This is a step below. We're no longer moving the whole object. I'm moving just a vertice. Just a vertice. Maybe 2, maybe 3. If I select 4 vertices, you'll see I'm actually just moving the entire face. Why is this happening? Well, every face is made up of 4 vertices and 2 triangles, but we'll talk about the triangles later. Okay. So our goal in edit mode is to take our shape and manipulate it in some way or form that creates an object. But you'll notice this. I've got this square here, and I'm moving it around this cube. And I can move it, I can scale it, but no matter what I do, it's more or less still a cube. It's just a really funky looking one right now. So what do? How do we make our cube look not like a cube? Well, we have to add vertices, add edges, add faces. And there are a few different ways that we can go about doing this. But the primary one is pressing Control R. So Control R, little hotkey pops up in the bottom there. And you'll see now as I hover over edges, I'm getting this little yellow line. And if I click, I'm now sliding this little yellow line around. And then if I right click, it's going to let go of it and put it right in the middle. Okay, and this action you can see it pops up. It's called loop, cut, and slide. So what this has done is added edges. But everywhere that an edge intersects creates a vertice. And everywhere that an edge cuts a face creates another face. So now when I go into face, I'm not selecting the whole thing. I'm just selecting part. When I go into vertex, you'll see there's an additional vertex down here as well. And this is what really opens us up from just working with primitives to working with all kinds of things, because I can start moving these around now, and suddenly it's not looking like a cube. I can add more, and I can move them out, and it's looking even less like a cube. Even less like a cube. The more I add, the less like a cube it's going to look. When do we know to add these loop cuts then? Well, you're going to be building up from scratch. How many of you have painted before? I assume many. That looks like many. Gavin probably told you you're going to be building up these big shapes first, right? You're looking for these big shapes. You're painting in those blocks. You're not looking at the details right from the get-go. Same thing applies here. I want you to get used to just building up these things with the basic primitives as much as possible, and when you can't progress anymore is when we start to add these loops. So let's run through a quick example. I want to make that table, but I don't want to make it out of a bunch of cubes for some reason. I want to keep it all as one piece. Well, I can start by just scaling everything down, just like you would, still in object mode. Okay. I'm going to do this little thing. And let's make 4 table legs on the corners, super basic, but I'm going to grab an edge here. G, as we know, moves around. And then here's our next bit of learning. When I press a direction, so what are the 3 directions we're working with here? X, Y, Z. Boom. If I hit X, this red line's going to pop up. I'm now locked to this axis. So a lot of you are probably going around like this, and you're moving, and you're going like, and you're trying to make it flat, but it's not quite there. You don't have to fight it. X, right? If I hit Y, it's going to move on Y. If I hit Z, it's going to move on Z, right? Alternatively, if I go to top view and I hit G, because I'm looking at it from the top in orthographic, right? So I hit numpad 7. It's going to ignore any changes when I just move around like this to the z-axis. All right, it understands that when I'm in orthographic mode from the top, I probably don't want to move it up and down, because if I move it up and down, I can't even tell I'm moving it up and down because it's orthographic, right? So if I move this around like this, you'll see it stayed at the same height. So when we're working from images and different angles, like hint, hint, assignment 1, you can use the different views to quickly create those shapes without having to worry about locking into an axis every time. So let's just move this over. I'm gonna hit G, X, and move this to like here. We'll add another one, Control R, click, and we could slide it all the way down here. And remember, every time we add these new edges, we're adding new faces too. So now we've got 3 distinct faces up here. Let's add one on each side as well. So I'm gonna grab this and use Y this time to move it over to the corner. Control R again. Use Y this time to move to the other corner. Yes?
Quick question while we're on Luke and his slide. Is there a way so say suppose you're in a scenario where you're loop cutting and you use scroll wheel to have 2?
Yep.
Yeah. Is there a way now, like I know you can slide them, but is there a way in this one operation, is there like a hotkey where you can edit the amount of space between them, or do you kind of just have to deal with that, it being in the same space?
You kind of just have to deal with them being in the same space. It's always even, but there are other ways to do this. If I was working quickly, I wouldn't at all be doing it this way. Right? You can loop cut, you can move it, you can mirror it. Loop cut, move it, mirror it. Okay, and then it applies the same thing. The mirror bit I just did is an add-on. That's like advanced stuff. We're not going to worry about that too much. I'm just showing different ways that you can do the same result. There are faster ways to do it, though. You are right.
It's just like a nitpick I have, like with using the tool as a tool, because normally I use multiple
right.
That's whatever.
Yeah, generally you just kind of got to mirror it over or find some other way to make sure it's even. You can use proxy meshes as well. That's more like modeling 2 stuff, though. So from here, I've got these little squares in the corners, fantastic, where my legs should stick out. Loop cutting is not going to help me. And what's going to happen if I move these faces? Well, it's just going to move everything, right? So again, we've reached the limit of what I can do with my cube. Now we need to move past cubes. What do we do to move past cubes? Add more edges. How do we add more edges this time? You'll see I'm in face select mode because I want to extrude this entire face. New hotkey for you is E. When you press E, you'll see it automatically locks us to the Z axis, and as we move up and down, I'm creating new faces and moving them down, and it's connecting those new faces to where the original face was. So here, move it down, table legs, boom, right? Hit tab, now we're back in object mode, okay? And we've got a table, quote unquote. Not the prettiest table in the world, but just to give you an idea of what you can do with this, okay? So extruding is cool. Anytime we want to add more vertices in a certain direction, or if we're thinking about silhouettes, we can extrude. Extrude, 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 all right? But there's an issue. If I extrude, and then I want to cancel, so I right click, can you tell me what I did wrong?
You still created the object, the plane, but it's now on the plane where you started.
Yeah. So when I extrude, once I hit E, I'm committed. I've made the new geometry. If you right click or hit escape, it's still going to be there for some reason. I don't know why Blender does it this way, but it does. It's still going to be there. So I now have what's called overlapping faces. I've got 2 faces in the same place, and you can see this starts to create some weirdness here that we don't want. So every time you extrude, if you think it's a mistake, Control Z. Use those 256 steps I told you to set up. All right, you got a lot of them, make use of them. Now we're back to where we were with one face. Okay? If we have 2 faces on the same place, we're going to get this thing called Z fighting and a bunch of other issues. We don't want it. We don't want to have geometry on our mesh that we aren't aware of. We want to know where every vertex is, every face, every edge. That really helps us stop issues early. So what else can we do with this crazy feature? Well, let's make a cylinder instead. By default, when you add a cylinder, this little thing's going to pop up. It's 32 edges. That's a lot of edges. The fewer edges, the easier it's going to be for you to work with this kind of stuff. So I'm going to dial this back from 32 to, let's say, 12. Way easier to work with, way less problems down the line. So let's say I'm hypothetically making like a chisel. No reason. Let's use edit mode here. And I'm going to use a combination of scaling and extruding. So these are all things you should be aware with, right? Everybody knows how to scale. Press S. Everybody knows how to extrude. Press E. Okay? And everybody knows how to do this. I've just moved it down on the Z axis using the Z key. Yep.
Sorry, how did you reduce the amount of faces on the side of the cylinder?
It's exclusively when you make it.
Oh.
So this is an unfortunate part in like Max and Maya. You don't have to do this. It's like part of the thing, and you can change it later. In Blender, when you add that cylinder, you got to tell it how many faces, and you best not change your mind because it's stuck. But it's very easy to add faces to the cylinder. It's very hard to remove faces from the cylinder, so start as low as possible. Something like 12, something like 8 is probably your best bet for starting. Yep.
I don't get the pop-up to control how many faces.
That's in the bottom left.
You don't get the pop-up? It should be there.
Oh.
It'll be small originally, and then you just click on it, and that's big, and we could change it, right? What's a cylinder with 5 sides? Can anybody know? Anybody? Yep. Pentagon. Boom. Right? So if you're ever looking through these things and you're like, where's my triangular prism? Where's my pentagon? It's just a cylinder with less sides. You make it 5, it's a pentagon. 6, it's a hexagon. 3, triangular prism. 2, not possible. Okay, so I've got my 8-sided cylinder here. I don't have a reference picture of a chisel, so we're just going to kind of wing it, but I know roughly that they go from big at the bottom. So we're going to imagine this is the bottom. And we'll work our way up to the top. So we'll start at the bottom here. I'm using G. Oh, actually, I forgot to explain this. If you hit Z, you'll notice I've been pressing Z a lot. It brings up this little window. This is our different view modes. So this is going to set what we're looking at and how it looks. So if I use rendered, it's going to use the light in our scene. This one right here. If I delete it, no light. If I go to solid, that's the mode that we've been working in this whole time. If I go to material preview, it'll showcase whatever materials on there. I don't have any examples on this computer, and it's not that important right now anyway. We'll learn about material preview when we start texturing. And most importantly, other than solid, is wireframe. So earlier, I forget your name, you asked about why it didn't select through. Right? If I go here and I try to select, let's say like the vertice back there, I just go like this. I've only selected the top. It's not going to select through to the bottom. There are a couple ways that we can select through the bottom, but the easiest is to switch by hitting Z and going to wireframe. And now you can see the vertices at the bottom and also select them. So I can select the whole thing now. So whenever you see me just quickly kind of flipping back and forth, right? Z, left, wireframe. Z, right, solid. You won't get used to this because you're going to be doing it just as fast eventually. Back and forth, back and forth. Like the Karate Kid. So in wireframe, I can now select this entire thing. I'm going to hit E to extrude it up. Right? E to extrude it up again, scale. I'm only hitting E and S. E, E, S. E, E, S. Okay. And now we've got like our rough screwdriver or handle shape. And all it took was extruding and scaling just a few times. This version of modeling that we just did, that you all also theoretically just did if you were following along, is called box modeling. It's the most fundamental form of 3D modeling, and it's the one that we're going to focus on for the rest of the program, or the rest of the semester. So you're going to learn all about how do we extrude different things, how do we create the faces we need to extrude, and then scale everything down accordingly. So let's keep going here. My 3D cursor is kind of all over the place, so I'm just going to quickly use that numpad period, or for my key row people, hopefully you bound it to your mouse. Otherwise, you're kind of just SOL. We can refocus and keep going. Now, we'll show you something else. The opposite of extruding is insetting. So extruding is going to make new faces outwardly. Insetting is going to make new faces inwardly. Why do we want to do something like this? Well, if there's a hole here where the end of our chisel is going to go in, one option is to just get rid of this, but now I'm left with these very thin pieces, and that's not good. We want there to be some depth and thickness. Maybe we want like an actual cavity. We can use I, new hotkey I. So when I press I, it will inset. So E stands for extrude, I stands for inset. It could not get any simpler than that. You'll notice instead of going outwards, we're going inwards now. And this allows us to create new faces inside of other faces and also isolate topology. That's a whole big word. We're not going to focus on that right now, but it'll make more sense later. So if I hit I here, now I can extrude downwards, and we get a much nicer flat bit here before we go down instead of this. Why is this bad? Any ideas? Too steep of an angle. That's basically pretty much it. For the most part, when we're doing this kind of thing, we're using real life as a reference. This is basically impossible. This is implying that this object has no thickness. And so what happens is when we're rendering this kind of thing and we're looking at it from different angles, it's totally lost on us, this edge, basically, right? It doesn't look quite right because it's just immediately dropping off. It's impossibly thick. But by insetting it, impossibly thin, sorry. By insetting it, we can give it a bit of thickness. And now we have somewhere for light to catch the edge. So light is now catching this edge, and it's no longer just a sharp bend. We have another way of doing this called beveling that we'll learn out in a bit. So I could alternatively just extrude this down, select the edge, and bevel it. But for now, let's just focus on insetting, extruding. So we've learned about moving, scaling, rotating, insetting, extruding. You now, theoretically, have all the tools you need to build literally anything. Obviously, we've got a lot of mastery of these tools coming up, but we can, at this point, basically make anything. Let's move on to the next little piece here. I'm going to make a new cube, right? So let's just think about like the end of the chisel now. I don't really want it to be made of a cylinder, so I'm just going to make a new object. We can shrink this part down to sort of go into the hole, okay? Notice I'm still in object mode. I'm still got this orange outline. I'm moving the whole thing as a class. If I hit N, you'll see it's moving the entire item, right? Now, once it's in place and I can't go any further with this shape to the goal that I'm aiming at, we can go into edit mode. So tabbing into edit mode, selecting this top face. Again, I'm using wireframe mode to make sure I get that whole top face. And extrude, right? We're on Z. We can move it up, move it up, move it up, move it up. Okay. We'll learn one more little tidbit about the extrude. I now want faces coming out on either side, right? Like it's wings. That's how a chisel goes. It's thin and it's thick to the outside. I could extrude this one and then also extrude this one, but there's no guarantee I end up with the same amount on either side. There is a way to do both at once though. If I select this one, and I hit Alt-E. So another bit of thing in Blender. Almost every option has an Alt option as well that gives you more details, right? But we're learning piece by piece. So when you hit extrude, it's doing the default extrude. There are other extrudes. If I hit Alt-E, it's going to give me other versions of extrude, including extrude faces along normals. I don't really know how to demonstrate this without just pointing at it. A normal is going to be, does everybody know what a normal is, roughly?
We've covered it in Essential Math for Games, but
Okay.
it'd probably be best to explain it in this concept.
All right, let's give it a quick little rundown then. So this face, somewhere in the middle, it's pointing perpendicularly in a direction. So if we imagine the face like this, somewhere on that face, we're going to find a perpendicular angle like this. That's called the normal. So every single face is going to have a normal in some capacity that aims in some direction. And a lot of what we do in Blender is built off of this normal. If you extrude, it's going to extrude on the normal. If you do other operations that I can't think of off the top of my head, it's usually using the normal to do that kind of thing. This is why it's good so many of you took CG. It's kind of important to know this stuff. It really does help your understanding. So knowing what I've just explained, when I hit extrude faces along normals, what's probably going to happen? Again, think, we're working at we're not at the class level anymore. We're working on the vertices themselves, working the functions. I have 2 faces selected. Which normal is it going to use? You can be wrong, but you can guess. Anything? No guesses?
In this case, it would use each individual normal and extrude out from both.
Boom. Each individual normal. So we're working right at the lower level. So when I hit extrude along normals, it's going to do both. It's going to take every face I selected and extrude it on its normal. So this way I can do both at the same time, even though they're facing opposite directions. This isn't possible with the normal extrude. So boom. Now I can go back to edge select, grab this one and move it up. And I want this one to match this one. But let's say I've already done this a long time ago and now I'm lost. How can I make this edge equal this edge? A few different ways, but the easiest way is the next thing we're going to cover. And this will be the last one for today probably because you're already overwhelmed, I'm sure. It's a lot to go over. And this is snapping. You will be snapping a lot. Basically everything I've covered today, you'll be doing every time you model. Everything we do in the future lectures is more like things that you'll do most of the time, but everything we've done today you will use every single time. Snapping. There is a hotkey, it's Shift Tab. I never honestly use it, I just press the little thing up here. What snapping allows you to do is, quite simply, snap one thing to another thing. By default, it's using increment, which will be good for when we get to our environment stuff, but right now it's not so good. So you can see it's just moving up a certain amount. I don't know what the increment is. It changes as you zoom in and out, right? So I think this is literally a whole meter it's moving. The more useful one is vertex. So again, all this is moving vertices around. That's what we're trying to do. Now when I move, I can snap to a vertex, just like this one. There's a problem. I'm moving everything over. All right, I'm moving the entire edge to this vertex. There's something we learned about our tools earlier that can help us in this situation. Does anybody kind of think they know? Not alt this time. We're already within G. We're already within G. It helped us create this structure in the first place, the table with the legs. Yep. It is exactly moving across a particular axis. So what happens now if I lock into Z? I want to move just the height, and I snap to this vertex. The edge is not going nowhere. It's locked in place on that Z axis. So it's going to match on the Z with the other side. Yep. I just press Z. So going up, and I just press Z. Now it's locked on the Z axis, right? I can do it for X or Y as well. Same thing. Lock on the Z. Click, boom. I now know that these edges are perfectly even. Okay? Fantastic. So there we go. With those like 4 tools, we've created this chisel-esque thing. Obviously way simpler than your assignment, but using those tools that we just used, you can do the assignment right now. Everything I did to make that assignment, I just showed you, more or less. And then just rinse and repeat it. Oh, the little grooves, more extruding, right? The extra little bits, more edge loops, right? It takes a lot of understanding. I'm not expecting you to get it right away or do it right now, but the general idea is that's the process. That is box modeling. If you understand that, you can start making props. Any questions? Roughly. I'm sure you'll come up with more questions as you do this more later. You'll just gonna have to shoot me a message. I'll help you. Or check back on the recording. I'm literally gonna upload it probably before I leave the classroom here, and it'll be there for your viewing. No questions. Okay, everybody wants to go home and play Silksong. I don't blame you.
So true.
So here is the final expectation for the diorama. Again, if you're doing GW, that's a whole. Obviously, I'm expecting a GW game. That's different. But if you're not doing GDW, or if you just want to work on a personal project, this is something that you can do. So these are the general final expectations for this kind of diorama. I am not expecting this kind of quality, right? This is like really good. This is good stuff. This is not quite what I'm expecting out of you. But these are kind of broken down into 3 very unique different types. I won't pack up yet unless you want to do the... There's one more thing that's just the weekly assignment. You can do it at home if you want, or you can use the class time and I'll be here to help you. I'll leave it up to you. I've kind of broken these down into 3 different types. We've got extremely highly technical, we've got a lot of little pieces, we've got a lot of well-done pieces, and we've created this pretty in-depth environment. This is good for most of your purposes because this will be good for something like GDW. This one, something more stylized, but this one is going to be where you're focusing on your composition. So your composition is going to be your big thing. Will help guide you towards some final piece that looks really good for your portfolio, but isn't necessarily something so great for your games or GDW. And then the final one is something built specifically to be a diorama with 3D in mind. I don't know if I can even find the link to it, but just know the way it's built, it's obviously looks 2D, but it's 3D. So it's a scene that's built as a drawing, even though it's in 3D.
I think
Okay.
I can get you a link to that.
That last one, I'm pretty sure Gavin went over.
He probably would have. These examples are all from Gavin originally.
Oh, okay.
So he's probably shown you these before. This is now when we're actually going to build them. Okay. So what kind of skills do we need for this?
Marcus, I'll
Simple ones. Oh, you're going to send the...
Actually, I'll post the link on the channel.
That's even better. That would be perfect.
It should be the first one.
All right, boom. Modeling 1 channel. You should be in this. I see 24. That's half the class. And most of these people are still from last year. So I would recommend updating that. All right. So this is the last example. If you haven't seen this one, it's pretending to be 2D, but it's actually in 3D. So we've got a viewport that we're using. We're making the most of our 3D space, but still doing something more 2D artistically. Why have I separated these this way? It's to give you a better idea of where your strengths lie. Maybe you're really good at composition. That second option's for you. Maybe you're really good at 2D, but you hate 3D. This option's for you. Maybe you're like me and you're just like making workflows and barely even like making the art itself. That first one's for you, right? So there's a bunch of different ways that you can kind of interpret this stuff, right?
There's an option to like show the faces. I don't know what it is.
Yep. So this is called Sketchfab. It's a 3D viewing software. You can upload things. We will be using Sketchfab later, but you have to learn how to export first. So that'll be like next week. Right, so this is what it looks like. Pretty intimidating to just look at this right now, but I guarantee you by the end of the semester, you will at least be able to understand everything going on here.
Can you show us the shading board?
The what?
The shading board for that.
Shading board?
Yeah.
Sketchfab doesn't really have that, as far as...
So what are they mainly used for to get effects?
What did they use for the...
Like the visual effects that they got on that.
Oh, it's just hand painted. Like they hand painted it, and then the outline is using. I can go over that later. It's called a double mesh technique, where you invert part of the mesh, make it bigger, and then hide it behind. There's a bunch of little techniques. We'll go over that when we talk about Sketchfab later, and I'll upload a video on it as well. Cool. Any questions for the final diorama? That's kind of the idea. I just want to get that in your head. Obviously, I'm not expecting you to start now, but you can at least start thinking about what you want to make for the rest of the semester, yeah? Cool. Activity number 1. This went live on Canvas like early on. You can do it now. You can do it at home whenever you would like. It's 7 o'clock. There's like an hour left of class technically. But because it's the first week, there's no reason really to stick around. Simple model. And presenting professionally. So I want you to prove that you're familiar with moving around in Blender. I need orthographic shots. I need perspective shot. I need something that proves you've used edit mode a little bit and did some extruding and scaling. That's it. Beyond that, pick something that interests you. It always helps to do stuff you're into. If you looked at like my slide from my introduction, there's an awful lot of Sony products on there. It's not by coincidence. I just like making them, so it really helps me stay motivated. I'm sure there's something you like making. sword, character, whatever else. Pick something that you are actually interested in just to keep things interesting, or just to keep things motivational. Okay. And then there you have like an example submission. So that's just what the submission should look like. This is the first one. It's worth 3%. Like I said, I'm going to do 10 worth 3%, and then there's 2 weeks where there won't be one. I think the last week for sure, or maybe the last 2 weeks when you're like really grinding exams in GW. Again, I don't really love the idea of weekly activities, but I need you to keep working every week, so that's why we're including them. They're small, they're fast, they're worth 3%. Okay, so if you submit something like this to me, you will get perfect. That's it. That's all I'm asking for. Probably there's a pretty good chance that you've made something during this class right now that you can submit, right? Sweet and simple. That was a question that you were about to ask?
No, I was
Different.
asking how would you submit it? Just like take a screenshot?
Yeah. So when you're submitting, we can just go in here. And up here you can see there's this overlays button. I can just get rid of it and take a screenshot, right? But if you leave with the overlays on, it's kind of ugly. Don't really want to do that. If you're curious about how it should look, you can check out assignment 1. Yep.
Are we allowed to use the chisel or anything else we made in the class?
Sure.
Okay.
As long as you present it to me properly.
Yep.
So this is what I mean by most of these submissions, not the weeklies maybe because they're tiny, but most of the submissions will have examples of what is good and what is bad. So for the chisel assignment, if you give me something like this is just a random sub-D prop I had lying around, I will go, cool, good presentation. If you give me something that looks like this, I will go, dude, I can't see the wireframe. Why are your notes in my face? And I don't want to see the grid in your submission. Please don't give me this. It hurts my eyes to see. Like, it's so simple. It takes less than 2 minutes to present something like this instead. It's worth the extra minute. I guarantee it. And if you're struggling to figure out how to make it look more like the top image, throw it in the modeling 1 chat, because I'm sure somebody else already figured it out, or ask me directly, and I'll throw it in the modeling 1 chat, and you can take a look at it there. Cool. That's a wrap on week 1. So congratulations, you're now modelers-ish. A long way to go, Jason?
How would you slice objects? So like if you have like a bunch of shapes beside each other and then you want to just add an object on top, how do you do that?
Splicing an object. I'll stop the recording and then we'll kind of